Hi, I'm Amber Kenyon. I'm with Gateway Research Organization. We're an applied research association based out of Westlock, Alberta. We, of course, do research at Grow, but then we also do extension. And with extension, that means just bringing information to people. So as part of that, we had the extreme privilege of hosting Coffee Shop Talk with Gabe and Steve. So what this video is it's talking to Gabe Brown and Steve Kenyon about regenerative agriculture and the things that are going on today. So it's actually them talking with each other through a call. A lot of fun to do, a lot of fun to host. If you haven't looked up any information from Gabe Brown or Steve Kenyon, I highly recommend it. They have a ton of information on regenerative agriculture and what's kind of happening within the industry. And with no further ado, let's head over to them and they'll tell you a whole bunch of things. We went over 19 topics in 45 minutes. So yeah, let's talk with them. You guys are really distracting.
So we're supposed to be having coffee, right? I don't like coffee.
Yep.
I've got a chai tea latte. I'm one of those guys now. My wife said that she was going to make me a coffee drink that I'd like, and I quite enjoy it. But I actually did some numbers. If you buy a chai tea latte from the fancy coffee shop, it worked out to $17 a liter. And in comparison, we're just under $1 a liter for fuel right now. So I don't buy them from there. I make my own.
Yep. I'll never forget it. Once I watched an interview of Warren Buffett, and he was talking about how he became a billionaire. And he said, I always make my own coffee. He said, that's where it starts. He said, you can make it for pennies a cup rather than go through and spend all this money on these drive-throughs and that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
So because of that, I drink ice water right out of the well, and that's about as cheap as I can get.
Can't get cheaper than that. Yeah, that's for sure. Good. So I got to sit down with Paul this winter. Yeah. I didn't realize it, but I had met him before.
You had.
I did.
When he was in college, I had sent him to your course when you were in Minnesota.
Yeah.
He was,
When was that? Staples, Minnesota was about 2009?
Yep. 2000, yep. And I told Paul, you need to skip school and go listen to this guy. And he really enjoyed it. It was good. Him and his cousin went, and so
that had a really good turnout.
Yeah, you were polluting my son's mind back then. You were molding him. Yeah.
Good. Well, when did we first meet?
Boy, I don't know, Steve.
I think it was the Edmonton Soils Conference.
Yeah, we had heard of each other, of course, and that, but
that's when we first met.
Face, that was probably about it.
I remember because we had the Western Canadian Grazing Conference for many years. That's what it was called. Yep. And then that year, all of a sudden, they decided to change it to the Western Canadian Soils and Grazing Conference. So we adjusted the title a little bit. And I wasn't involved in that. And I was like, oh, really? That's our only grazing conference we have. There's lots of crop conferences. Like, why do they have? Now we got croppers coming in here. And I heard about this guy coming to talk about crops, this Gabe Brown character. And like, another crop guy coming in. And probably one of the best presentations I'd seen in a long time. So I was glad to have some soils thrown into the grazing bin.
Yeah. And, if there's one thing that people don't realize about me is I tell people, I'm a poor cattleman, but even worse farmer. I mean, I enjoy livestock. That's what we enjoy doing. That's what I enjoy working with. I often am known for my work with cover crops and soil health, but the livestock is what I enjoy. Yeah. I just love coming home and moving livestock daily and watching grass and watching chickens eat a mouse.
Well, one of my favorite quotes from you, like I said, you were kind of known as the grain farmer in this. And one of my favorite quotes at the Soils Conference, you put it up on your screen. It was something like, nothing builds soil faster than a perennial polyculture.
Yep.
And to have the cattle on there. So the more I got to know you, the more I knew, well, he's not really a grain guy.
No.
More of a cattle guy.
I get bored to death sitting in a tractor, if truth be told. I mean, I tease my friends who are grain farmers that, a monkey could farm nowadays. They got auto steer and everything's plugged in, and
Yeah.
you could put a monkey in the seat and they go back and forth,
Yeah.
you know. So that's not for me. I'd much rather be out and on the ground and observing. And
I would say, I actually say this to other people too. One of the big advantages you have as a speaker in regenerative agriculture is that you can reach the grain farmer.
Yeah.
Right? They'll listen to you because you've got that background. The only other one that I know of really is also Brendan Rocky, right?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a potato farmer. He can reach the
Yep.
grain farmer. Honestly, I can't reach the grain farmer. Joel Salatin can't reach the grain farmer. Alan Savory, Jim Garish. None of these speakers can reach the grain farmer. But that's what I see you and like you said,
Well,
Brendan too. You can really
Yep.
get that aspect, that side of agriculture that has no interest in regenerative agriculture.
Yeah. And there's many more now that can talk both sides of it. But one of the keys, I think, is that animal integration back into the grain side of it. And we're seeing that right now, just a huge push to get livestock back onto these grain farms. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is things, I know it was that way in Canada too. I see all the barns, 100 years ago, they were very diverse, and we've moved away from that. But I think this current pandemic is also a wake-up call that this production model is not working, and we can't just rely on exports of monocultures.
Yeah.
We have to rely on, okay, how do I make my own farm or ranch more self-sufficient? And how do I get different revenue streams onto the farm and ranch? And livestock are a big part of that, and not just cattle, even though cattle are my favorite, lots of different species. And it's a real opportunity for many people.
Yeah, but infrastructure has been taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The number of, the drives that I take around the countryside and the number of fields with no fences.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way any of those, and some of that land so desperately needs livestock on it. Right? I say it all the time. Every grain farm needs livestock on the land. Right? There should be, if I'm not a big fan of government subsidies, but all the subsidies that they put out there and give you incentive to do things, I think one of the biggest one they should do is perimeter fencing. Right?
Yeah.
Get that fences around that grain field. Get it just so you can put some livestock back on the land, and that would be a huge step forward.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few days ago, I did a podcast with Dr. Mark Hyman, who wrote the book Food Fix, and very, very popular. He's had 14 #1 best-selling books or some crazy thing. And we were talking about that because he said, okay, Gabe, with the regenerative model, how are you going to feed the world? And I just laughed. I said, we'll feed the world faster with the regenerative model than they will in the current industrialized commodity type of a production model, because we're stacking all these enterprises. Yeah. We're getting so many more nutrients, so to speak, off the land, nutrients as in food, than with monoculture production. Yeah. So it's just a win-win situation. The other thing we're seeing with the current financial challenges farmers and ranchers are having is that the diversity helps bring in cash flow and resiliency from a financial standpoint. And that's key. Here in the States, they're spoiled rotten with government subsidies, and I don't take part in any of that. I despise it. I used to, but we've weaned ourselves off all that. And I found that it actually is more beneficial to my ranch to not take part in those programs, to be able to be adaptive and to change according to weather conditions, according to market conditions, etc. And so now obviously there's a balance there, Steve. You can't run yourself ragged doing all these different enterprises. Yeah. So it's quality of life comes into play also. Yeah. But you can certainly find opportunities for stacking enterprises that don't add a tremendous amount of requirement from a labor standpoint.
Yeah, that's a big component to a lot of farms. Most farmers don't charge for their labor. They don't understand their labor, and that's one of my big pushes all the time is you gotta understand your equipment and labor charges. Add it up, keep track of your hours doing things, and if it's not paying, then that one maybe needs to go. Right?
So talking about that, why don't you expand on that, if you would, a little bit? For instance, how many livestock are you moving a day? How many head of cattle? And then how much time does that take you to do that?
That's a good point. I get that debate quite a bit. There is a economic threshold on every pasture that it depends on where it is, how big it is, how much work is involved in the moves, as to how intense I can graze. Okay, so extreme example, if it's, let's say my pasture is 30 miles away and it's 100 head, you know what, I'm not going to go down and move 5 times a day, right? My economics, my labor component, my travel time is going to add up and it's not going to be profitable, right? Whereas if it's outside my back door, right, and I got to walk to move a fence, well, then maybe I can move 3 or 4 or 5 times a day and it will pay for itself. So I find that there's every pasture, I've got a pasture calculator, I call it. Every pasture I have to run through a gross margin on it and figure out, okay, how intense can I be to where the economics works, right? And if it's depending on the situation, a smaller herd, well, it doesn't pay as well for the amount of labor, right? It divides out a lot better to move 500 head than it does to move 50 head.
Yep.
If you're going to take your piece of equipment and yourself, right, charge for both of them, right? They've got to pay for themselves. So every piece of land is different. So I basically run it every piece I run a different gross margin and figure out how intense I need to be.
And that's the way to do it. In our consulting business, it absolutely just boggles my mind how many farmers and ranchers don't have a clue. The only financial data they have is their tax return. That's it. They just don't do the analysis. They can't tell you which enterprise is really making them money and which is not. And then when we go consult, that's one of the first things we require is, okay, you got to find out what's making you money and what isn't, and then shed those enterprises that are not making you money. Or how can we stack enterprises in a certain way to add value and at the least cost. And I don't understand farmers and ranchers operate with hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars worth of equipment and land and overhead and operating, and they sure don't run it like a business.
No, they made all their money on real estate and appreciation.
Right. Yep.
Most of the farmers around here, that's how they're able to retire or able to survive.
But the sad part is they have to sell it to do that.
Yep.
And and then you have to own the land to do that. And I don't think at some of the costs land is, at least in my area, it's not economical to own land.
Well, that's why the next generation can't farm the same way as the past generation.
Right.
Right?
I just had a neighbor sold 3/4, so 480 acres for $17,500 an acre. Okay, you can't cash flow that. Needless to say, Gabe was not contending bidder on that.
You didn't. Your hand wasn't going up.
No.
But how does a son or a daughter take that over?
Right.
How can they possibly?
Yep.
So it's just it's the economics are skewed. The values are out of proportion, and I think we're in for a correction.
Well, it certainly could be.
Yeah,
certainly could be. It needs correcting because it is out of whack.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
I got a question for you. What's the most common question you get asked as a speaker?
Oh, hands down, it's how do I become no-till organic?
Okay.
Yep, hands down, most popular question.
And what's your answer to that?
My answer is simply this: when you figure it out, let me know so we both know.
Good.
There are a number of producers that are making a go of it. Now, obviously, if you're doing vegetable market, etc., that's not that difficult to be no-till organic. It all depends on scale.
Yeah.
But on a large scale basis, there are a number of people who are making it work, and the key to that is you've got to be able to grow covers and roll them down. And rolling those covers down then provides the armor to inhibit weed growth and weed suppression, and there's several that are starting to make it work. Unfortunately, I have not seen anyone from probably South Dakota on north that's been able to make it work. Simply, we don't have the growing season to be able to get those covers to a state where rolling will terminate them, and then to get a cash crop to maturity. So don't have that one quite figured out here, but
just the season's too short.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I don't do any crops, so my most common question is what species to plant. Everybody wants to know the recipe of what to put in. So that's my most common question. That's for sure.
Yeah. And,
so
and how do you answer that?
I tell them what's growing in the fence lines.
Yeah.
What's native there. I don't try putting in a bunch of species that aren't going to survive anyway, but put in a polyculture, a mixture, different type of root systems, and as many roots as you can, and nature will take over from there.
And I'm of the opinion, I certainly agree with you, that I think too often we're trying to dictate what's in a mix. Let nature dictate it, and then we adjust accordingly. And it's amazing. I haven't found much that our livestock won't eat. What we consider weeds, they consider tasty often. So, so my neighbors might not like my weeds, but I love my forbs. And so it's just up to us to have the fortitude to allow our livestock, allow those species to grow, and then allow our livestock to be able to harvest them. So we've been doing quite a bit of work with Dr. Fred Provenza and Dr. Scott Kronberg, and then Dr. Stephen Van Vliet. And Dr. Van Vliet is a doctor with Duke University, and they're using the mass spectrometer to measure all these photochemical compounds that are found in plants. And it's absolutely amazing. He can measure just shy of 2,100 different compounds now. And what we're finding is the more diverse the diet in grazing animals, the more of these compounds that show up in their meat. So in other words, it's available for our health. And that's really exciting. Then you start really getting into food as preventative medicine. And, with this current pandemic, the importance of that is showing up more and more, because people are, the people who are unfortunately succumbing to this disease are those with weakened immune systems. So they're not getting all of the, not getting the wide array of these phytochemical compounds that are needed. And when you take into account that the majority of the Western civilization diet traces back to only 6 different crops, that's pretty scary. And then get it grown as monocultures, and
it just seems like common sense to me. Right. I mean, the more diverse the diet of your food is, it means your food's going to be better. Right.
Without a doubt.
Common sense. Sense. Too bad we don't have very much of that anymore.
That's for sure. So this has been a couple years ago, but I was in a debate with a vegetarian. And so we each got to ask each other a question at the end. And I simply asked her, well, how many different plant species did you eat yesterday? And she said, about 15 species. I said, really? Well, the steer that I ate ate over 100 different species the last day it was alive. I'm more of a vegetarian than you are,
Yeah.
you know, and case dismissed there.
Yeah.
Then, you know, what could she say to that?
Yeah.
But it's really what the work of Dr. Van Vliet and Provenza are showing that out, that, hey, we really need to pay attention to where our food comes from and how it was grown and raised. And so I think that regenerative agriculture, one of the reasons for the push for it is just that. It will lead to food higher in nutrient density. And we're proving that out now. So here's one we sometimes get. When you're custom grazing animals and, you know, you're going to have it within a herd, there's going to be a variable as far as which ones gain, which ones hold condition, and which ones do not. How do you handle those in a custom grazing situation that do not hold their condition?
We'll get a few of those. They start losing weight. They just don't look good. Either I'll have the owner come out and look at them and we'll go through the herd and I'll make note of them. Sometimes I say, you know what, these ones aren't going to do well here. You might as well take them home. And they just come pick them up and take them home. And then they usually treat them with a bunch of chemicals and throw a bunch of grain at them. And then they do okay. But I honestly think that our genetics have changed over the years. And there's a lot of animals out there that don't do as well on grass anymore. Right. And as you get a bull from a feed test where their rate of gain is improved and is very impressive, it's always measured in a grain feedlot situation, right? So as the feed efficiency in a feedlot situation goes up, I honestly think that it goes down on the grass side. So
I would agree with that. I don't know how far we want to go down that rabbit hole, but boy, I often get asked that because of the, you know, demand in grass finished proteins, beef, lamb, etc. Too many people think you can take the genetics that they can take the genetics that they have and convert them to a grass finished animal. Boy, it doesn't work that way. I tell them, like here in the States, no more than 5% of the cattle in the States can really grass finish and offer the quality of product that needs to be offered. Yeah. We've just changed these genetics too much to tailoring them to the market, which was feedlot, that demand.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were just doing some work. We're working with a company that wants to build a bunch of processing plants or retrofit existing ones, geared towards the grass finish, the pastured protein market. And the challenge is going to be getting the animals to fill those that are, because there's a big difference between grass fed and grass finished. And, you know, we need to change genetics a lot in order to make that happen. And one of the ways to do that is just treating animals like a tool rather than like a pet.
Yeah.
And I know you certainly treat them like a tool, the way you winter graze and bale graze, and more people need to do that. And that's the way to change genetics the quickest, I think.
Or they're my employee.
There you go.
For me.
Yep. That's another way of looking at it.
We're actually kind of excited here this year. We took on about 500 head of grass fed feeder heifers.
Oh, good.
So there's a program, a fella here started a program up quite a number of years ago. So I'm not a big fan of the feedlot, right? But I've been trying to get away from that. But when I'm custom grazing, you kind of have to get what you get. And I've been trying to get bred heifers for the last few years because those are going back to a farm and they're not necessarily going into a feedlot situation. So I've been pretty lucky about getting mostly bred heifers the last quite a few years. But this fella came to me this year and he said he's got a bunch of grass-fed program that he's running. And so, we've got a big group of them in there this year. And it's interesting because they're not allowed to go to a feedlot. Even when they get winter fed, the one of the protocols they have is that the animals need to be fed where the feed is grown.
Wow.
Right,
Good.
so it's got to be on the same land that the feed was grown on is where they're fed.
Great.
So they've got to be. You can take silage or you can make hay, but it's got to be stay on the land that it was grown on. So that's
Okay.
really kind of cool. I'm excited to be working with them. So
Okay. So what weight did you bring those in at?
I got two different groups. One came in at about just over 600 pounds, and then another smaller group of steers came in at about 800 pounds. So
Uh-huh.
so we'll
Okay.
graze them for the summer, and then I'm working with a grain farmer too. He's putting in some fall, early winter crops, some cover crops to move the cattle over there and graze them.
Oh,
And then I
good.
think they're going to go to another neighbor of mine who's got, I wouldn't say he's got a feed lot, but he does some custom feeding.
Mhm.
And they understand the protocol that they have to be fed out on the land that was grown. So they've got some silage that they're going to take up and they're going to feed it back out where it was grown. So
Good.
interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Idea.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the market demand is there and it's increasing. You know, the grass-fed protein market has increased over 20% per year for 20 consecutive years. That's the kind of market I want to be in.
yeah.
You know, that's a pretty good trend right there.
Yeah.
And now, of course, with this pandemic, it's just skyrocketed even
Yeah.
faster.
I think waking people up a little bit.
Yep. Yep. Steve, knowing what you know now, what's the one thing you wish you would have known 20 years ago?
Oh, I actually say that quite often in my presentation. If I could go back 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
leave more residue.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, when I first started, I got into holistic management and I knew the grazing concepts and all the great things about grace period and rest period, but I never left enough residue because it was a cash flow thing, right? I'm a young family starting up. I got to put food on the table, and if I left the animals out there for an extra day in every paddock, that's an extra $1,000 at the end of the season, and I need that money because I'm broke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I wish I could go back and just say, no, leave it, pull them out early because that is so important in speeding up the improvement of that land. I could have done it way faster.
I just smiled when you gave that answer because if you were to ask me the same question, the number one thing for me is armor on the soil, which is residue. That's number one.
Yeah.
I just spent a week down in New Mexico, and the whole southwestern U.S. is turning into a desert.
Yeah.
Although it's not only the southwestern U.S. I can travel across my home state of North Dakota, and 90+% of the pastures I look at don't have enough residue. Let's forget about the cropland. Let's talk grazing land. It's the same principles, though.
Yeah.
They don't have enough residue, and it's just. I flew into Jackson Hole, Wyoming 2 weeks ago, and spent a couple days driving around there looking at properties. I didn't see a single one that had enough residue.
Yeah.
Then I flew into Denver and rented a vehicle and drove down into New Mexico and spent a week. I only saw really a couple of pastures that had decent amount of residue.
Yeah.
And that was on a ranch we've been working with for a while. And it's just like, man.
A lot of our world issues right now, I believe, could be resolved or lessened quite a bit by improving our water cycle, right? Droughts, fires, mass storms, flooding, all of this could be corrected if agriculture could get the water cycle working properly.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple solution to me.
Yep.
But we have to do it on a global scale.
And what's the big buzzword right now we're seeing? It's a race to be able to quantify carbon measurements, right? It's carbon. And I think they're going about that wrong. I think they need to be measuring water and the water cycle.
Yes.
And because without good infiltration, without soil aggregates, you don't have biology. Without biology, you're not going to build carbon reserves.
Everything starts with water.
Yep. It starts, the soil's a subaquatic ecosystem. And Right now, my ecosystem's pretty dry down here. So
Yeah.
I hope you send me some. But
Oh, we're
yeah.
flooded. We're
Oh,
flooded. Our
man.
water table's so full right now, but opposite.
Yeah.
But again, that's well, you know, whatever, if you believe in it or not. But people talk about climate change, right? We've got extremes now, right? We've been in the last 11 years, we've had 7 years of drought according to our statistics, right? And then the last 2 were flooded.
Yep.
And you know, people don't understand why you're flooding. Well, because you're ditching. You know, everybody's draining everything out, or you know, you take 3 or 4 little wet holes, and if everybody drains them, well, you know how many gallons of water that's going down the, it's crazy.
Well, you know, I'm always jealous when I come up to your neck of the woods that your soils have not been abused near as long as ours, and you know, they're not as degraded. And you just look at the water holding capacities of soils, though. What amazes me, though, even up where you're at, how carbon, organic matter content has just plummeted. And I don't care whether we're talking in pastures or in cropland.
Yeah.
And that's having a negative effect again on the water cycle, on infiltration, and it just steamrolls from there.
Yeah, evaporation.
Oh, that's just huge. Yeah. So we were in New Mexico on a ranch, and the ranch manager, and this is a very, very large operation, 896,000 acres. So pretty big ranch, okay?
Yeah.
And it was a series of ranches, actually. And he was telling me that, but Gabe, you don't understand. It's the soil types. It's the soil types. That's the reason. And I said, really? So I said, show me a spot with poor soil type. So we go there, and I stick a spade in the ground. It's just like cement, you know, no armor, no residue, no aggregation, etc. And then I literally moved less than 6 feet to where there was a couple of plants with some residue. And I dug down and I laid that spade full of soil right next to his. And I said, next to the poor soil. And I said, okay, you're going to tell me that the difference, because it was night and day, black, white, you know, one soil was high in carbon, one was just white from no armor and just baked. And I said, see, this has nothing to do with soil type. It has everything to do with management.
Yeah.
And you know, you've seen my presentations, but I often tell people that your ranch or your farm is a direct reflection of you. If you don't like it, change your management, because your management is dictating what it is. And I think that's a message that is hard for a lot of people to comprehend.
Yeah.
You know, they play into woe is me, I don't have the best soils, and you don't understand, I'm stuck in here, and you know, no, but you can change that, you know. And that's why I was glad you listed that as your one thing you could if you knew then, because it's the same thing with me.
Sometimes I can be a little bit blunt, and people, that same thing, they say, well, we have different soil type, or we can't do that on our sandy soil or our clay soil. Or I tell people, I don't care what your soil base is, it's your job to build soil.
Yep.
Okay, I can grow great, fantastic pasture on top of concrete because I've done it.
Yep.
I had an old hog barn. Just the cement base was left on this piece of land that I had, and just this big cement pad in the middle of my pasture. Right, there's no barn left, but just that. So one fall, I went out there with some bales and I bale grazed on top of this. Right, just left the residue and they ate on it. Oh boy, you couldn't see that concrete after. About 2 years and it was gone. Like you couldn't see it, and beautiful pasture growing on top of it.
Yeah.
And about 5 or 6 years ago, I lost that quarter land, and that's a little field in the front. But the guy who took the land over, he cultivated all the big field up. I can't wait till he tries to cultivate up the little field.
He's gonna hit that cement.
Yeah, that would get rid of that iron.
But it's true, and I don't care if we're talking in a pasture, if we're talking in cropland, if we're talking in a garden, we can heal this. We can heal all of it.
Yeah, it's our job to build soil.
Yep. You know, one of the things we're really seeing this day and age is it seems that we're getting more polarized instead of coming together as a society. And I think regenerative agriculture has the ability to bring society back together, because I don't care if your main focus is climate change. Regenerative agriculture can certainly play a major role in mitigating climate change. I don't care if your major focus is in water quality or quantity issues, such as, nitrification or too much phosphates in the watershed, or, look at what's happening in our lakes and estuaries with all the algal blooms, etc.
Yeah.
Regenerative agriculture can take care of that. I don't care if your focus is on human health, because we have a real human health crisis going on in this world. It's just terrible what's happening as a society with healthcare. Well, a big part of that, of course, is that the nutrient density of the foods that are being produced are not near as high as they should be or once were. And also, we're not getting all these different photochemical compounds that we need to in our diet. So regenerative agriculture can certainly play a role in that. And what I like to tell people is, it's okay that we disagree on 20% of the things. Let's come together on the 80% we agree on and move forward. Yeah. And society would be much, much better off if we did that.
Yeah, it's regenerative agriculture. It's a cure for a lot of things.
It is. And as farmers and ranchers, it's a good cure for an empty pocketbook too.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. I remember you showed the slide at Edmonton too, from Darren Coleman, that graph, right? That it just blew me away the first time I saw that. It's the net farm income of Canadian farmers for 92 years or something like that. Yeah. Just incredible, the losses that big ag takes all the profit, and farmers left with not very much. So.
Yeah. And I hope that more people are realizing they need to take control of their own finances, whether it be doing custom grazing like you're doing, whether it be doing value added, stacking enterprises, but become a price maker instead of a price taker. Too many farmers, ranchers, they just go to the grain terminal or they go to the auction barn with the livestock, and whatever happens. That's no other business operates that way. No other business, and I tell you what, when you start setting your prices higher than your cost of production, that's when you really become a businessman or woman, and you're taking your future into your own hands. And we need much more of that in agriculture.
Yeah. Well, we got to, get out there and teach more of these young people or new farmers. That's actually the most common people that take my schools are new farmers or young farmers. And they need to learn right away that the business is the most important part, right?
It is.
I loved Stan Parsons' book, If You Want to Be a Cowboy, Get a Job.
Yeah.
If you want to be a farmer, you need to understand business.
Yep.
You can't just go out there and drive a tractor and pound posts and deal with cattle. You've got to understand the business side of it. So.
Yeah. For 25 plus years, we had interns on our ranch, and they come with these preconceived notions that it's all an easy life and, just take care of some animals, and then they find out it's work. But then those that are serious, they think they need to own land, and they think we got to own a place to. No, that's not it. You learn the business first. You find out what you enjoy doing. Now, yes, we all need to do some things we don't enjoy, but that's part of farming and ranching. But you focus on what you enjoy and what you can make a profit at. Too often I see people, they only want to do what they enjoy doing. Well, that doesn't do you any good if you can't make money at it.
Yeah.
You got to be able to make money at it. And that's how you move yourself forward.
Amber and I were actually talking yesterday. I talked about fair weather farmers because it was pouring rain, but I had to go and move a herd, right? They had to move, and I was about a half a day too late, and they were little
Yeah.
little hard on that piece.
Yeah.
But you know what? We got to go out and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of other industries, they don't go out in the rain. They don't go out in the
Yeah.
bad weather. They don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's part of
But
what we do.
even in saying that though, yes, we have to go do that, but we can make it easier on ourselves some ways. Like I tell people, Gabe really isn't very intelligent. You know, for 25 years, I calved in February and March in North Dakota. That's not very intelligent. You know, now I calve in late May and June. Matter of fact, Paul informed me today that we're about 3/4 done calving, and I have yet to see a. I haven't even been up there, you know. And Paul just swings by once a day, but they're out on pasture and they're doing fine.
No good.
You know, we need to understand context and make sure we're farming and ranching in our context. You know, that there's really no reason to be calving during the winter in Canada. You know, let's calve out on when nature dictates its optimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I built a cow wheel many years ago. It's a combination of biological calving wheel, and then I put in the gestation and everything in it with the seasons, and you can kind of rotate the thing around and look at it. And what I was looking at, because I'm in Canada, right? It's cold up here and we get lots of winter. You do too, but we get to brag, we get more winter.
Yeah.
I was looking at it. When is the most expensive time to feed animals? For us, it's winter, right?
Yep.
So December 21st to March 21st, basically. If I line that up with my biological aspect of the breeding cycle, so the cheapest time to feed the cow would be that second trimester. Okay, if I line those two up together, puts calving date right on June 21st.
Yep.
Right. So you're trying to put the most expensive time with the cheapest biological time, and it puts it in the summertime.
You know, think of the ramifications on profitability if you would do that.
Yeah.
It'd be huge.
Yeah.
And think of, from a cost standpoint, putting up processed forage. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The other part to that too was I took a Dick Diven course many years ago, and he's got a chart that I just pulled out of the old binder I pulled out here a little while ago, and it talks about the days for an animal to return to estrus, depending on the season when she calves. And if you're calving in June, she can return, I think it was within 12 days of her calving. She's on her first cycle already.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're calving in January or February, it's something like 60 days. Yep. So she's got 3 complete full cycles before she has to rebreed.
Yep.
And that affects your culling rate, which affects the depreciation in your herd, which is a huge cost. Right. So that was a big eye opener for me when I saw that, about wow, that time to get into rebreeding is that's crucial.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, another thing we've done that's been very profitable is to leave the calves on the cows.
Yeah.
And we typically don't wean them till around the 1st of April.
Yeah.
And at that time, when we fence line wean them, and the calves go right out on stockpiled forage. In other words, it was a pasture that we did not graze the previous year. And so they go right out on grass. Weaning is stress-free. And our cows lose condition in the winter with a calf hanging on them. And they're out there grazing the majority of winter. Like this past winter, we only fed 38 days. We bale grazed for 38 days. So they're out there grazing through a few feet of snow, and they do fine, but they'll lose condition.
Yeah.
But then what happens, you pull that calf off them and you get that cow out on some, again, stockpiled forage. She blows up like a tick, you know. She'll gain 5 pounds a day, and by the time calving rolls around 15th of May, she's hog fat again.
Yeah. Comes down to genetics too.
Yep.
Right. Does. I've had a few herds in that we've done that with, and one herd came in, they did great, and you know, like you said, they just gained right back again. I had another herd come in, and they got skinny and they got worse, but they never culled them.
Yeah,
right? I
and
mean, if
there lies
you're
the
gonna
issue.
push them, then maybe you got to start culling for more than just being open.
Yep.
If they start getting skinny and not coming back like that, well, maybe those genetics you need to kick out and bring in some other better genetics.
Yep. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Gabe, I think we're gonna close her up here. I appreciate
Okay.
you being on here. I'm gonna do a shameless plug though.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
If anybody wants a really good book, this is Gabe's book, Dirt to Soil. Highly recommend. Where can you buy it?
Yeah, it's available online. I'm not sure in Canada which bookstores. You can go to Chelsea Green. It's my publisher.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And
there's this other one.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about this one though.
Oh no, I've actually read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
My book is through Stockman Grass Farmer. You order it through them. So there's our shameless plugs for today.
Yep.
There we go.
Appreciate that.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, Gabe. I appreciate chatting with you, and I hope you have a fantastic season.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Well, thanks for joining with us. If you enjoyed that video, please feel free to subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and keep up with what's happening at Gateway Research Organization.